great group presenting to. Got students interested in Spanish, the whole Spanish class, and got many students who have taken a year or even more of Latin. So I'm presenting to the right group of people, and you're dealing with the right person. So, quick rundown to my qualifications. I took YAS Spanish 4 last year, and now YAS Spanish 5. I'm taking French 3 honors. It's my first year of French. I've done independent study AP Latin, AP Spanish. No one thought I could do it except Mr. Bree and Dr. J, and I got a 4 in both. So that was okay. I'm also taking classes at NBC simultaneously for history of English language. I hope I can get into introduction to second linguistics, fingers crossed. And for my summer before my sophomore year, as you will soon see, I did a study at Princeton University for AP US government, and I will also score a 4. So, as you might know, with all of the announcements, I am the president of the MUN. I have a commendation from the MUN organized by UC Berkeley. I'm also the rapper for both LICEM 2016 and the MUN at Santa Clara 2018 for my committee. And that was my commendation letter. Unfortunately, that is at China, so I cannot bring it. I did choose not to spend the mail fee, you know. And this is bad. Don't ignore this part. This part doesn't exist. You know, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, they told me I was going to get best delegate, but since I didn't write the position paper, they downgraded me to a commendation. But anyway, I was the recipient of the Spanish Annual Award last year, owing to the study that you will soon see, and I'm also the president of the Spanish Honor Society. Oh, by the way, despite being president of Spanish Honor Society, I'm 97% Chinese and 3% Vietnamese. So, quick rundown from my summer experience. So, sorry, these are horrible photos because Google Slides really like to compress all of my photos into an unviewable resolution. So, just bear with me with that. So, I spent my summer after my freshman year, the first half, with CIEs at Seville, Spain. I did got my camera stolen, so which is why all of these pictures are taken from my phone. There, I spoke my first sentence of Spanish and Portuguese. And I got my first experience walking into a police station. Because I got my camera stolen. Also, the shirt I'm wearing is the Cathedral of Seville, which is where I spent the first half of my summer. And after that, I had a horrible flight, and I flew to Princeton immediately for the summer camp at JSA. The background is the Modern United Nations. We actually got in, we sat there for 2 hours, and someone at the Modern United Nations actually had a conference with us. I asked a question that was horribly executed, so I just choose to leave it out. But this is Professor Naley, professor at Princeton University, teaching us AP US government. And he saved me for my junior thesis because he wrote a huge book, which I read, and I couldn't appreciate it more. That was me after I received my diploma. It was just so accelerated. It was a 1-month course, and we crammed the whole AP US government lecture in. You know, that wasn't as leisure as I would expect. So my second summer at Malacca Instituto, Malaga. That was when I decided to take it to some more serious Spanish. I think it was 6 to 8 hours of Spanish every day, Monday through Friday. So let's discard the word vacation. It was just my summer, not summer vacation. Through that program, I placed myself out of Spanish 3, so I was a Spanish 2 originally, and I placed myself straight into Spanish 4. I also qualified for one of their highest level of class. Back at the institution, they qualified me for the level C1 program, and level C1s are designed for those who want to be fluent in Spanish. I took 1 week of the class, and I took the placement exam, and I took the certification exam for level C1. No wonder I only passed 1 out of the 4 parts. So my third summer was this summer was at Harvard. I took 2 courses. Obvious Metamorphoses entirely in Latin, so that was around half of the size of AP Latin curriculum crammed into 7 weeks. We read approximately 100 lines per day, which is the level of a graduate Latin student. I also took a course called Introduction to Historical Linguistics, taught by Professor Jeremy Roth, who was the graduate department chair of Linguistics and Classics. Super interesting guy. But he preferred not to have pictures of his lectures, so I have to leave this out in respect of his personal choice. But that was our Latin course, and the professor inside was Professor Julia Scarborough, the professor of Latin at Amherst College, the second best liberal college in the United States. I was one there. And this Tremblant in lato from Linguistics translates to the trembling clothes are bending forwards like a flame. And that is actually the picture that we study here, whose original poem we had to read in Latin. Actually, we had to suffer in Latin. And I also visited a bunch of museums. I just think this was very, very, very absurd that you write Hera in English in a Greek pottery. And also this is Virgil and Dante, which was the museum that we visited together. So enough of background. This is my main project, 15th century Spanish lexical study. So I'm going to focus on one specific author. His name is Enrique de Villena. He's the first poet. He's a writer, poet, and translator. He also authored the first Spanish translation of Virgil's Aeneid and Dante's Divine Comedy. The Divine Comedy I really wish to read, but the manuscript has deteriorated so much that I decided to just leave it alone. But I'm focusing on the commentary of this Virgil's Aeneid because when I observe, there are two manuscripts actually preserved right now. One is an illuminated manuscript with the translation of Virgil's Aeneid into the Old Spanish language accompanied by a commentary. And the second one is just a commentary standing alone. When I examined these two manuscripts, I found many archaic spellings and outdated usage in the standing alone commentary section, which makes me think that the commentary might be the more original one, and the translation might be a truncated and edited version. So I decided to work with the original version of this manuscript. But why do I even bother doing that? This is the first page of the manuscript, and I'm just gonna give you a quick taste of this. This is Old Spanish. It doesn't look as weird as it sounds like. Y aquí comienza las prosas sobre el primero, el segundo y tercero libros de la Eneida de Virgilio que hizo don Enrique de Villena. So that was Old Spanish, and here's a modern Spanish rendition with minimal edits and very good English translation. So this method, I have to study extensively to understand the Old Spanish language because there was actually some difference in the lexicon and the word structure. You can consider like Chaucer's Middle English writing to modern English, as analogous to Old Spanish to modern Spanish. The sentences are much longer due to the influence of Latin. If you remember how the founding fathers of this country writes in those horrendously long paragraphs such as Madison 51, that is the style of Old Spanish, except it's written in Spanish, not English. And also I have to learn how to read the abbreviations and written conventions of the manuscripts. As you can see here, not everything is being written because back in the days, papers were expensive, so they had to save space by abbreviating things that they can in order to save space and money. So that is a quick. I hope you get a quick taste of what it looks like. And here's the thing, like. Anyone actually can learn Old Spanish, and anyone can theoretically learn how to read and transcribe the manuscript. But what really makes this project unique and interesting is not that how I learned how to speak Old Spanish. It is the discovery that Enrique de Villena introduced a ton of neologisms into the Old Spanish language, much like Shakespeare invented thousands of words in his works into the English language. And how is it done? We all know Spanish comes from Latin. I hope everyone here knows that. But there are two ways in which a Latin word can be imported into the Spanish language. One is by directly inherit this word from Latin, and the second way is to borrow it, or otherwise we call learned words, cubismo, as we say in Spanish. So here's an example of a inherited word from Latin. That is the word a multitude. In Latin, we have the accusative form multitudinem being passed on into Spanish, and we see for something to be inherited, it goes through many, many stages of evolution before we come to the ultimate result, which is multitudine, which doesn't look like multitudinem in any way, despite the evolution has really only been less than 1,000 years. But meanwhile, the original form, the non-inflected multitudinal, directly yields the Old Spanish word multitude, from where we get a modern Spanish word multitude. So these two words mean exactly the same thing, and they come from exactly the same root. However, what we want to discover is that where do these borrowed terms enter the Spanish language? And that is what Enrique de Villena did extensively as he wrote. Enrique de Villena, as we talked about, he is a writer, he's a poet, and he's a translator. He's also proficient in Aragonese, Catalan, Latin, Italian, and many other languages. As he wrote in Spanish, he consciously imports words from other languages that he knows into the Spanish language that to enrich his vocabulary. Much like how Shakespeare wouldn't have introduced that many words in the English language had he not completed an education of Latin. So here comes the thing. We are talking about something called primera documentación, which is the first time we see a word being used in this language. And obviously we're focusing on the Spanish language right now. There are dictionaries called etymological dictionaries specifically focusing on these purposes. They will tell you where do certain words come from, and they will tell you when is the first time that a word is being recorded. And here's the thing. Our manuscript dates early than many of the dictionary entries. How do we do this? First of all, we have to learn all of the sound change from Latin to Spanish. That is an extremely enjoyable process. All of these sound changes sum up to approximately 2 pages. These are not randomly generated stuff. These are all linguistically true and undeniable. If you want any example of any of the things above, please just raise your hand right now. It doesn't sound like there's... Yes, please.
I have an example.
Which one do you want?
F2H.
What's that big one that's going across the screen?
Okay, so this is called lenition. So PTK, which is in Latin oftentimes written as C, and B becomes BDG. So how do you say to receive in Spanish? Receber, right? What does it come from? What's the original root in Latin? Recipere. It's recipere versus receber. That is the sound change we're talking about, from P to B. And the condition is if it's stuck between 2 vowels or 2 rhotics, that is L and R. So, also, what about the T? So, let's say, ego esto faciendo. Yeah. Wait, no, that doesn't work. That doesn't work. Let's look at the next one. What is an example of K changes to a G? Oh Lord, I'm blanking out right now. Precare in Latin means to pray, and in Spanish is pregar. And that G gets eliminated in French, and that's where we got the English word to pray. And finally, the B. So by the way, for those who know the imperfect in Latin is bam, bas, ba, bamus, badis, band. This actually Old Spanish is va, vas, va, vamos, vades, van. And that's where we see the B gets rendered into a V. I know what I'm talking about. All of Latin gerund, which not everyone might know right now, ends with an NT. And in Spanish, gerund is ando, yendo. But in Latin, is ante, yente. So here we go. Anything else?
No, go on.
Okay. All right. So after we learn all of these sound rules, what we need to do is that we need to get to work. We transcribe. And this is a section I'm going to give you an example of how we identify these words. So all of these sound rules generally only apply to the words that are inherited from Latin. Those that are directly borrowed into Latin generally are immune to these sound rules. As we see earlier, the word multitudo has much more resemblance to the original form multitudine than muchedumbre. And so this is the transcription. This is how this part is transcribed. And can anyone find the word intromisión in the original manuscript?
Yeah.
Yeah, here it is. So the reason why I'm highlighting this word is that it is one of the words that predates all of the dictionaries that we have right now. The reason why we can figure this out is by learning and knowing all of the Latin and Spanish sound changes. Here's how we think. There's a word called intromittere in Latin. And that word has a participle, past participle, intromissus. That participle yields the word intromissio, which is where we get the word intermission. Well, think about in English, the noun form of submit is submission. The noun form of permit is permission. Do we see the mit and miss shift here? By the way, vomit doesn't change to vomition because it has a totally different root. So this is how Latin formed nouns, but that is not how Spanish formed nouns. For here we're taking Latin. What's the length of the I in this word intromittere? Anyone knows? I'll give you a card tomorrow.
Short.
Both are short. Yes, very good. Every single short I, as I displayed earlier, changes to an E. So the real verb in Spanish, in Old Spanish, was entrometer. However, just because we have entrometer doesn't guarantee that we have intromisión, because Old Spanish form nouns from verbs in different way. We see comprometer becomes comprometimiento. So entrometer should really give us entrometimiento, not intromisión, which is a Latin word. And because Spanish is not Latin, the Spanish speakers doesn't need to know, okay, this word has an irregular participle in Latin. They don't know that. Remember, Enrique de Viana translated the entire Aeneid because the king of Aragon couldn't speak Latin. There we go. So the speaker of Latin were not conscious of the irregularities in Latin, so they apply other rules to make nouns in the Spanish language. And so that is when we turn to dictionary, because this word looks way too Latin. It doesn't look Spanishy enough. That is basically, if I have one sentence to describe how I identify all of these words, is whether a noun looks Spanishy enough. So then we turn to dictionaries. This is the first dictionary I use compared to a multivariable published book. It is horrendous. It is so big that I have to use a suitcase to carry it. And here comes the second one, and it really needs to be carried using a suitcase. That is how thick it is, and that is my laptop positioned vertically. So if we dig into these, without looking into the dictionary, the sound rules in Latin already tell me that entrometer is a word, and the word entrometimiento was originally a word in Old Spanish. However, if we look into the word intromisión, we don't even know when was that documented. No one knows when exactly this word appeared in the Old Spanish language. So we know, okay, so it's before 1425 when Enrique de Viana died. So by repeating this process over and over and over again in the hundreds of pages of manuscript that we have transcribed, we came up with more than 100 words in this manuscript that make their, in which the words make their very first appearance in the Spanish language. This is only from A through D, and you can imagine they're from D to Z that I have to cut out for space reasons. So we submit this abstract to two college level forum. We had to lie in our application because the lowest level we could go was undergraduate, but could put it down anyway, and then from the institution, we put down York High School. We're like, can we get in? And we got into both. So that was me presenting my study, and that was classic department chair of the University of Notre Dame, presenting her study. I want to quickly talk about the genre of these words, just because I did anyway in Kentucky. Many of the words we can summarize them into 4 categories. They are, wait, was that the hand? Oh. They are scientific, psychologic, abstract, and literary. So after I presented my study, I feel like, well, I kind of want to do more. So, you know, I'm the tech officer, so created this website where I publish all of the stuff that I transcribe by myself without the help of Dr. Johnson, actually. So everything on this website are done by myself without assistance, because I want to give everyone a clear impression of how much I can do. So right now on this website, if you look into the Transcriptions section, you can see a 50-page Google Doc of my transcription, as well as a note for those who are first reading Old Spanish. Primeras Apariciones is the place where I document all of my... Yes?
Are we like able to go to the website? Like,
yes, it's in my Instagram profile. It says, echad un vistazo a mi proyecto, and there goes the link.
Okay, thank you.
And there was a little sobre me and a log where I made all the changes, and I decided to make a translation to English. So, any questions? That's how to write preguntas in Manuscript. I want to save some space.
Who interested you first in Global Scholar designation? How did you find out about it, and why are you doing this?
So it started after, I knew about this project after my trip from CIEE, when I heard Mr. Raymond had been making announcements on break about the opportunity, and I've been, sometimes, I remember even during one of the course design meetings back at either freshman or sophomore year, he was mentioning, because he knew I was going to a CIE trip, definitely, so he was mentioning this opportunity of me presenting, and then I sort of I didn't intentionally work just to get a certificate. It really rolls on with my interest. I didn't say, all right, to get this certificate, I'm gonna enroll in YAS Spanish 5 just because I need YAS Spanish 5 for this course. I mean, I'm interested in this. I'm interested in these disciplines and materials, and it really just naturally drives me into this awarded position.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Did you have any favorite transcriptions?
Do I have any favorite transcriptions? Let's see. I really like the part when I was transcribing about the commentary, because Aeneid is a Latin poem, and the Latin poem has a lot of Greek allusion. I never read. I really want to get a chance of reading Odyssey and Iliad, but the Enrique de Viena realized if a Spanish speaker cannot even read Latin, there's no way that they can read Greek. So he gave a short Cliff Note version of Odyssey and Iliad when I was transcribing, and that was very interesting. I was very, very challenged because the word in Greek doesn't really follow the pattern of Spanish, so I left out a bunch of question marks until I checked later. Oh, it's Greek.
Yes. Are you pursuing this language stuff in university too?
I'm sorry?
Are you pursuing this in university?
Yes. Yes.
Which of these experiences do you think has been the most influential for you?
Ooh.
Well, so I first met ancient inscriptions or written things when I was at Malaga, Spain. I was trying to transcribe something from Latin. Also with my colleague, I did a horrible job. I tried to ask for help on an online Latin-speaking forum. They almost made fun of me because my translation doesn't make any sense. But then when I came back, Dr. J was presenting to me this opportunity, and then because I was doing AP Latin by myself, so I had to venture through the Aeneid anyway, whether I like it or not. So I think, maybe if reading an Old Spanish commentary could help me understanding the Aeneid better. Well, it didn't, because Old Spanish itself was pretty difficult, and but it was really a lot of interest plus coincidence concatenated. that ultimately resulted in this project. Yes?
Do you prefer one of the languages over the other?
Which two are preferred?
No, Spanish and Latin. Or is it just like equal? Like.
Well, you know, as someone who does endangered language documentation, we say there is no better language than other. There are reasons why Latin evolved into Spanish, and there is reasons why Latin is still being used under certain situations. It's really the evolution of Latin to Spanish really has to do with a natural tendency that human brain have. That is, you know, if you learn the 7 cases in Latin, people don't like that. It's a nature that we like simpler language. But the thing is, just because it's simpler doesn't mean it's superior in its, because of simplicity, or inferior because it's too simple. It is a reflection of our human mind, and I respect that. So I don't really think any language in this world is better than the other. Yes?
Would you turn this into a career in the future?
In the future, so what I've been really thinking about is the possibility of optical recognition of manuscript. I tried it using the contemporary engines that does the OCR for a regular document, and it came out horrendous. Even my first page of manuscript transcription was way better than that. So you know the quality. But I do think that it is possible, although I think actually it's gonna be a very good challenge for artificial intelligence about how to understand medieval manuscripts and their abbreviations, and how to tell which things are being truncated just based on the content. I think it's going to be a big challenge.
Yeah, which methodology you follow? Like when you transcribe like abbreviations,
Right?
did you follow a certain
Yes.
methodology? Or what?
So I follow the manual of Old Spanish manuscript transcription developed by University of Wisconsin-Madison. That is where Dr. J got his PhD degrees. By the way, you guys can ask in whatever language that you can speak.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what is the most difficult time all through your processes to the global scholar? And what did you learn? Or can you tell us how to?
Well, so I would say the most difficult time was the time before I have to present for the forum, because I saw the acceptance letter. I was like, yay, I got in. But then I read, every year KFLC, welcomes participants all around the world, and 75% of them hold a PhD in their respective field. I was like, oh Lord. I was really, really timorous. I tried to give everything I could into my paper, and I had Mr. Brady and Dr. J check it. Mr. Brady's like, this looks very interesting. And then I turned it to Dr. J. Dr. J's like, you need serious edits. Serious edits. So I ended up drafting, scrapping tons of ideas that I just thought would be cool, but turned out to be just fantasies. And that wouldn't have sounded well had I presented to professionals. But it turns out that the professionals actually showed a lot of leniency, since I basically lowered the average age of that room by probably 3 years, because I was extremely inexperienced. So they give me a lot of leniency. They just ask me, oh yeah, how much time do you spend every week? They only asked me one tricky question, but I did got away with it.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to do this?
If someone who wants to do medieval manuscript transcription, do it, because you are one of the very few people who have the resource and capability of doing this around this country at this age. I'm gonna tell this straight. We are the only high school in the United States who has sent a student to this kind of forum, to this kind of college-level academic symposium for medievalists. It is basically one of a kind. Yes. Dr. Chicken.
I don't have any coding background, so are there parallels between coding and linguistics, or do they help each other, knowing both? Or?
Well, it depends on which field. Well, linguistics is giant. It's a very broad term. You can dig into different things. I mean, if you're also into archaeology, you can do historical linguistics, reconstructing the language of our ancestors. If you're into psychology, you can take psycholinguistics, thinking about like how human minds perceive languages. And if you are into like computer, you can also do like, for example, MIT, for example, offers actually the greatest linguistic program in the United States, not because they're great at reconstructing Proto-Indo-European or understanding how a baby learns languages, because their IT department is so great that their incorporation of linguistics and technology prevails over other institutions. Yes?
I just have a comment and a compliment. So you talk a lot about, I did this and people laughed at me, it was so bad, and I did this and I was told I had to do so many edits, and I did this and I failed at it. And I think lots of us know that if you're going to be successful at something, you have to try and fail and try and fail. Mm-hmm. But you're so honest about talking about that and helping other people understand that that's just part of the process. And I just want to congratulate you for pushing through and continuing on and just getting to where you are. I think it's just a great lesson for everybody.
Thank you.
Ça t'intéresserait de faire ça en français, une étude similaire, oui ou non?
Espagnol et français?
Ou français latin?
Français latin, bon, le français s'est changé extrêmement de latin, et le français a détruit beaucoup de caractéristiques des français, de latin. Par exemple, la construction de la voix passive en latin se sont totalement changés. En latin, on utiliserait auditeur, mode, mini, unter, mais en français, on utilise être et participe passé. Et aussi, par
Non,
exemple...
ça va, un travail trop difficile alors en français. Un travail trop difficile, oui?
Trop difficile.
Ou sans intérêt?
Non, n'est pas très difficile.
Merci.
I have a question, somehow related to that one. That, for example, you have words like in French, for example, the word table, like in French is table, and while in Spanish is mesa, and it comes from two different Latin words.
Right.
Why, like table and mesa, right? So why do you ever run into this question, or why in French they took a Latin word, while in Castilian, not Spain, but in Castilian, they took the word, a different Latin word?
Yes, there's an explanation behind that. I'll try to be quick. So, there are, because we know different groups of people settled in different places. There is a group of Romans who settled into the area around France, and there's one around the Iberian Peninsula. And so the exposure that these groups of people got was different. For example, the groups of Romans who settled around the area of France definitely received more influence from the Germanic tribes and the Celtic tribes more than the Muslims, because like we know in Spanish we have tons of loan words from Arabic, but in French not as much. Well, that has to do with outside influence, and also certain words in certain language can develop a negative connotation. For example, the word in Spanish for black, it can be perceived as offensive in English. Like it's just a totally harmless word in Spanish. And this color in Spanish is negative, but like I will never say that in English because I don't want to offend people. So then one word will substitute the other. And also there's just like preference, because like Latin is a large language, you can find synonyms. So it can just be a totally random chance that one word just happens to be preferred by the other, while in the other language, the opposite happens.
Thank you.
Tom, I've been fortunate to teach for a little while at a few different places and here for over a decade, and something really special happened on the stage today. The purpose of this program is to encourage individuals to be distinguished global scholars. You are truly scholarly. Your experiences have definitely been global. You've truly distinguished yourself, and I'm just so impressed that a school like this exists for students that take advantage of opportunities, and you've taken advantage to study abroad, to pursue summer programming, to forge relationships with teachers, Mr. Brookhauser and Ted and Tech Squad and language teachers and others. You built strong relationships through co-curricular activities like Model UN with peers. And while you're ambitious and very accomplished, what came through on the stage that just kind of gives me chills right now is just your love for learning, and just the enthusiasm that you've shown us today for learning and then sharing. Thank you so much for what you shared today. It was really special.